Right now, we're in the initial stages of the Ukrainian counteroffensive operations. The Russians control about 20% of Ukrainian territory right now. They have then reinforced it with, major fortifications. So the goal of the Ukrainians is really to punch through those heavily fortified lines and to retake territory. We've seen for the last several weeks the Ukrainians softening up Russian positions with artillery strikes or drone strikes. We've also seen the Ukrainians conduct attacks against key logistical hubs for the Russians, fuel depots, arms depots. We've also seen the Ukrainians conduct some strikes in Russia itself, including what look to be drone attacks in and around the Kremlin. The Ukrainians face a number of obstacles. The Russians have established pretty sophisticated fortifications on a 600-mile front. These are Dragon's Teeth, these are berms, these are trenches, minefields, barbed wire. So it's going to be difficult for the Ukrainians to punch through these reinforced lines. The Ukrainians are going to be vulnerable to a heavy barrage of weapons from a very large Russian military, not just on some of the areas that you would consider front lines. The Russians have also put additional barriers in areas that the Ukrainians may also advance. So a good example of that is Crimea, north of Crimea, where you see extensive fortification. On the one hand, the Russians have spent considerable time and effort putting the largest defensive fortifications we have seen in Europe since World War II. But on the other hand, as we've seen, your defenses are only good as the forces that are defending. And the Russian ground forces have been very mixed in this war, based on what the Russians have done. They've got more mass, they've got more firepower, they've got a reasonable defense. What the Ukrainians have, though, is a will to fight that the Russians so far in this war do not have. Russian morale has been pretty low. One of the things that Ukrainians benefited so far in the war is that their advances on the ground have led to additional aid and additional increases in types of weapons provided. And if this war gets bogged down, if they are not able to advance quickly to retake territory, a number of Western capitals may not just raise questions about a peace negotiation, but also may be less willing to provide the weapon systems that the Ukrainians need to continue the offensive. Conflict in general is likely to persist for the next really several months, maybe even years. At this point, the Russians consider Ukraine Russian territory. The Ukrainians understandably consider it Ukrainian territory. War in this case will settle those differences, but I expect this to be a protracted war, and what we're seeing now is just the next phase of what is likely to be a much longer war. Napoleon best captured the position the Ukrainians are in right now when he said, quote, "The strength of an army, like power in mechanics, is estimated by multiplying the mass by the velocity." What the Ukrainians need right now is velocity. They need speed. They need Napoleon's push for speed as quickly as possible over the next few days and weeks.